Hello, good afternoon and welcome. My name is Sammy. I work with C Learning and we're here to talk today about Google Chrome and Chromebooks. And you might be wondering where we got the people who we're speaking to from and how we've ended up where we are today. So I cheekily sent a tweet out and asked people if they could spare me 2 minutes to tell me why they love Chromebooks. And those responses are going to frame some of the questions today. So if you were one of those people that responded to that tweet, thank you very much. We will be feeding into all of your questions as we go through today. So it's time to bring on our wonderful panel. I'm going to bring them all in now. So we have Tara, Ian and Stewart joining us today. We are representing all ages of education here. We've got Stewart from primary, Ian from secondary and Tara from further education. And I sort of have done secondary and are in further education now as well. So I'm going to do the embarrassing bit now and I'm going to read their bios out now for them. So we're going to go with Ian first. Ian is faculty head in Aberdeenshire and he's passionate about improving computer science, business and administration pathways, making them relevant and exciting for students and increasing the visibility and uptake of these subjects in all schools. Ian is a Google Innovator trainer and he's currently working on his VIA 20 project, Future Lead Ed, and I'll pop the link to the chat for his website in shortly. Next up, we've got Tara. Tara's been in FE for over 15 years, specialising in the technology field, supporting staff with in-house systems and emerging edtech, currently exploring virtual reality and 3D printing. She's that missing link between the tutor and the IT department, and she tries to make everything as user-friendly and user-focused as possible. She's been working with Google for Education since the very beginning, and she's really excited to see where it's going, having seen the journey it's been on. Tara's travelled extensively and she's studied industrial design in textiles, which just sounds fascinating. She is a huge people person. She's one of my friends, so I can vouch for that. She loves to share and care, and she has held roles as an assessor, internal verifier, and she's taught customer service, website design, and all sorts in between. She's a huge fan of the outdoors and she loves a little bit of swimming in the sea, which would be too cold where Ian is. Welcome, Tara. And then last, but by no means least, we've got Stewart. He's been teaching for 25 years and he doesn't look old enough. And he didn't pay me to say that. And he teaches in Sandbach, Cheshire, and he's the IT computing digital lead at the school. And he's currently in year 5, but having been most of the time in year 6, he just fancied trying something different. He is a Google trainer and innovator, and he's openly wrote here, love Google tools and Chromebooks. So welcome along, all of you. Thank you very much for being with us today. So I will just point out Google Innovator as well here. I am a Google trainer. I'm a maths teacher by trade. And Ian, Stewart and I were all on last year's Google Innovator cohort and actually coincidentally in the same team as well. So we have spent quite a bit of time together virtually over the year. So we're going to dive into the questions, and Tara, I'm going to come to you first. So I want to find out from you, Tara, thinking about from a further education perspective, how do your students find the experience of Chrome and Chromebooks where you work?
Hi, Sammy. Basically, I don't know if you want me to just explain, we did do a short survey and we surveyed 200 second year students because they would have been in the first year last year during COVID. And one of the standout words that they were used more often than not was easy. And then it was fast and it's quick, it's secure, speedy, versatile. All that brilliant, you've got it up there. All those kinds of words that they used in the questions, their answers, and then other bits and pieces within as well. Interestingly, there was a visually impaired student using a touchscreen Chromebook, and she found it really valuable to have the touchscreen as well, so that she could increase the size, etc.
That's fascinating. Fab, thank you. And I love those words that have been brought out there. Portable, speed and secure, and those are coming up. This is the first of 3 sessions that we're running at Sea Learning. The next one being next week and the week after. Next week is speed and security, and then the week after is accessibility as well. So we'll explore all these things as we go through. Thanks for that, Tara. Ian, did you do any homework and do a survey for us?
Not a survey, but I can tell you. Sorry, I can tell you what we've been doing at Portlethen Academy. So there's a school of 900 students from age 11 to 18 where I work, and throughout the pandemic, we just before the pandemic, we had a small amount of Chromebooks in the school, and through the Connect in Scotland initiative, which was to improve the digital. To reduce the digital divide and improve the devices that were available to students when they were in lockdown 1 and 2. We now have over 600 Chromebooks in the school. Most of these go home to the students, and the students take them into school. So we're not quite one-to-one, but and I don't think we're going to ever get to one-to-one, but certainly that initiative has allowed us to get as close as possible. And we do have sort of carts of Chromebooks across many of the faculties in our school, not computing, unfortunately, but we do have one suite that's Chromebook only now. And I kind of echo what Tara's survey actually said. The uncomplicated response I particularly enjoyed, because it is just instant. You hand them out, they come out of the trolley, straight to the login screen. And we in Scotland, we've got this service called Glow. It's this sort of Scotland-wide digital network, and all of our services run through Glow. So for students to get access to Google and their services, they have to log in with a particular Google login, but they have a different email address, which is not Google, which is, again, it's just access through a different tile in Glow. So it's the Office 365 email. But so when they log in to the Chromebook, they log in with their Glow Google login, and then everything's just there. So the files are there straight away. They know that when they're typing, it's been automatically saved back to the cloud. And it is uncomplicated, and it's really quite remarkable what you can get out of the students in that 50-minute or near to 2-hour block when you're using devices like Chromebook. Whereas with with the laptops that we had before, you sometimes spent about 10 minutes waiting for it to log in, because it does take that time to download the profile off of the network, and then eventually get you into Windows, and then eventually get you into Word. And then what happens when you don't save it in the right place? So that, the comparison between the two devices is pretty stark. We also have a number of touchscreen devices. We were lucky. It must have just been what was available. And I keep getting surprised because mine isn't touchscreen. So when I'm working with students, I'm pointing at the screen going, just touch that. And then suddenly, something jumps on the screen. But they're making great use of it. I do think that we've got a way to go. We're on the start of our journey to using Chromebooks in the school, and I think we've got a way to go before the students are fully comfortable with using them. So like they keep confusing the everything button with the caps lock and things, but minor things like that. And it's just through sort of consistency of use and training and speaking to the kids about what they want to use the Chromebooks for. And I'm sure we'll get onto that later on.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I love how you threw some technical jargon in there as well, as Windows devices download the profile from the network, and I'm like, oh, that's what it's called. I'm not proud. I will openly say when I learn new things. Stewart, what about you? You've got the littlest of us here. How do the littlies get on with Chrome?
Yeah, well, we're fairly new in our Chromebook journey. We ordered some Chromebooks just before the first lockdown. I think we got 5, and now we have 72. And I get to spend a bit more money this term on even more. So for us, logging in, I know it sounds crazy, but logging in sometimes can be such a tortuous experience on other devices. But with Chrome, because we've done so much online learning, They literally know their Google login, and they literally, obviously just put up the lid of the device, log in, and they already know how to use the Google ecosystem as such. And it saves us so much time in comparison to what we've experienced before. And it's simplicity as well. And, I teach in year 5. And so I've been really pushing their digital skills since we've been back in September, because obviously not all children had a lot of exposure during online learning. Some of the children didn't have devices, although we managed to provide them with as many as we could. And so we can see that disparity, and Chromebooks actually are so quick and easy to pick up in terms of skills. And I've got children who, 3 weeks ago could barely log in, or it'd take them an eternity. Now they know their username, and obviously we have it so our domain is already set up. So they just put in the first part of the username, and then they log in, and straight away, within a few minutes, by the time I've given them out and written the date on the board, they're ready to go. And we've been using it most afternoons at the moment in terms of our foundation subjects, particularly with science and geography and history. And it's just given us a new dimension. And the fact that we're nearly one-to-one in year 5, 6, and we will be one-to-one before Christmas or soon after. But it's just been such an easy lead-in. And sometimes if you think about the teachers who are a little bit more hesitant with technology, these kind of things would break a lesson for those teachers. Now, actually, we just don't experience technical issues. They just get logged in and, away we go. It's great stuff.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I have very small children, and my eldest, who is Key Stage 1, can log into a Chromebook completely independently, can open up Google Clash. I mean, we had to prove it many, many times over the past 18 months. We've had to really evidence that we can do that skill. But I think there's just such a user-friendly approach that even littlies can grab the device and get on. And Tara, your example of the student with a visual impairment just sort of sums it up nicely as well. So I'm going to ask another question now. And I'm going to ask about creativity, and thinking specifically about using Chrome or Chromebooks. What opportunities for creativity does using Chrome or Chromebooks give your students? And Ian, I'm going to ask you first.
Oh, good. So I get to mention all the nice stuff before everyone else. Sorry. As for my sins, because I'm a computing science teacher, we teach a subject called Digital Passport. Now that is a bit less on the sort of programming side. It's more about web design and development, but it's not necessarily using code. So it's sometimes using sites like Wix or Squarespace, but it's about building the students' digital competence and confidence, and allowing them to navigate social media and blogging and things like that, and understanding how data and information is kind of used and abused across the internet. It's really quite a cool subject. Ties in nicely to The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Anyway, sorry, that's the course. But we use Chrome and Chromebooks when the students have them, because we're lucky enough to have computing suites. But we utilize Chrome especially to sort of create their own site. So we use services like Google Workspace, where we've got the sites. So they create their own sort of portfolio, which they then add to as the year goes on. So they'll be creating an animation as a response to a particular task. So they'll be sort of uploading that to Google Drive and then adding it to their site, so that I can sort of see that they're making progress and sort of improving their confidence and competence. One of the sort of favorite ones from last year was to use Screencastify, which is just an extension for Chrome, which was fantastic. I mean, students absolutely loved it. So not only could they create little tutorial videos where they were sort of navigating an app on the screen and then sharing that with other people, they were able to create very short sort of chats like this, but they were also...
Has Ian gone funny for everyone else, or is it just me? We should just explain, I forgot to say at the top, Ian lives in quite a rural area, so sometimes the internet does drop out. So we'll skip over to Tara. Tara, Ian was talking about a digital passport there, and I think that sort of appeals to you, doesn't it?
Yes. The Google, and like how it is now, Workspace for Education, as it's been rebranded, staff actually have embraced it so well. But sometimes it's those transferable skills that they kind of forget they have, and they think, oh, well, I only know how to do it on, say, Microsoft Word. Google Docs is something completely different, and I need training on it. And it's like, well, actually you don't, because you only use about 15% of Word, and that's what you've got on Google Docs. So the transition for staff has been really good. I like the digital passport for staff as well, because it kind of gives them that boost. And the students, it's interesting with the students are creative, and going back to, say, art students, they've been using the Chromebooks with graphics tablets. And one of the words, I think, on that tag cloud is they've used incredible, which I thought was really interesting for a survey from a second year student at FE. So that's it. Fantastic. Oh yeah, and they're talking about tactile buttons as well on the keyboard. And they've also created unique posters, and other, just doing their assignments and adding videos, creating forms, doing their own surveys. So yeah, and I think also there's this all devices and anywhere. So there was a lot of talk in the surveys about travel and the Chromebooks being really light and portable. And if looking at myself, you have ideas and things come to mind at the most strange times, and you're like, well, how can I do something about it? And it's like, it's that immediacy of having a Chromebook where you can, or Chromebook, or a smartphone or a tablet that has these G Suite workspace apps on. So yeah, it allows that creativity, probably one of the reasons, because it's so immediate. Yeah, and I'd like to say constant as well, but I don't think it might be for Ian with his Wi-Fi.
Yeah, when you're friends with Ian, it just sort of becomes part of every time you're on a call with Ian, this sort of happens. And I forgot to mention it. Stewart, we'll come to you next. What opportunities do your students get for being creative because they use Chromebooks and Chrome that they might not necessarily have had before?
I mean, for us, it has the potential to revolutionize some subjects. So you just take geography as an example, digital mapping, whether it's, Google Maps or Google Earth, just completely changes how a child interacts with a subject. And, we've already done a number of activities involving that, where previously you might look through an atlas, or, they might highlight something on a paper map, but actually having that interactivity through Google Earth or Google Maps has just made a huge difference. And I would go too far as to say that children might have had a fairly negative attitude towards geography, for example, but actually now, because of those digital tools they can make use of, they actually now have a greater interest in that subject. And even not just that, but we've started using Jamboard and slides for collaborative work, done it in English, done it in science in the last week or so. And they pick it up really quickly, but the fact that they can see somebody else working on the same slide or the same frame as them has really up-leveled, if you like, the quality of their work, because it's on show for everybody. And what's even better is I can show them that I can see everything that they're doing at the same time, and I don't even have to move. But I can echo the digital passports approach. So obviously we've got parents evening coming up in November. It's going to be virtual. And so what we're looking at doing is, because we've already got a number of pieces of work in their drive, is creating a digital portfolio that they can literally share with their parents prior to parents evening. We might not quite get it done in time for this parents evening, but that's certainly with my class, we're going to give it a go. And it just takes it out of the book. They can't come into school and have a look at their books, but they can see their work online. And not only that, but the children are so enthused about it in terms of how they've done it and what tools they've used. So for me, like I say, we're still starting point of our journey. I think we've seen a really positive impact so far, and really excited for what we can do with the future.
Stuart, that sounds amazing. As a parent, as sad as this is, I do miss going in and seeing the work and seeing the bookwork, because I drop them off in the morning and I don't see them until the end of the school day. So for you to be able to share that digitally via Drive, I think will revolutionise parents' evenings and parent feedback as well. Ian, you've put some more money in the meter. You're back with us. You were up to telling us about Screencastify.
Yeah, I saw you gradually vanish off the screen, so I assumed my Wi-Fi was going down. It does this occasionally, sorry. And I might get fibre one day, but it's not today. I keep seeing vans nearby. So yeah, so with Screencastify, it just sort of, I'm enthused about it because it's one of my favourite sort of creative apps. But you can use it for creating the screencasts of sort of app demos, or so some of my students build their own apps as part of their portfolio. So we just use like things like MIT App Inventor, but we then sort of get them to talk over it as they're working through it, but like a sort of live demo over the internet, and then they can upload that video later on, and we can use that as evidence, which is fantastic. But also they can record sort of panels like this using their Screencastify. I recorded my lessons during lockdown while live casting them over Google Meet, which allowed the students to kind of catch up with that. And so that started our journey as a class down using Screencastify. But they created their own podcasts. So we would plunk a mic in between them when we were all back in the classroom again in sort of early May. We had sort of little panels where they would sit and discuss a sort of a topic or a concept as a group. And it was led by the pupils, and so it kind of empowers them to take the learning in the direction that interests them and sort of suits them, and select the most effective means of communication as well. And it's all about sort of breaking down these kind of barriers for all people who are using digital devices. So like, for example, in our school, in fact in Aberdeenshire, and it was nothing to do with me, it was to do with our IT department, but read and write is a sort of installed by default on every single device. So you go into Chrome, you open a PDF, it automatically jumps into read write, and that just removes that stigma, where it used to be, oh, that person's got read and write installed on their login and it looks different to my screen, whereas everyone now has exactly the same experience. And because of that, it's even more accessible, so students can select when it's best to use a screen overlay, or to change the size of the text, or to download a paragraph or two as an MP3 and listen to it through their headphones. Even if they wouldn't normally do it that way, they've got the sort of freedom to explore and experiment with what works for them and what would help them learn best. And I think that's where digital devices are really succeeding just now, is it's given people that different access to resources that were always there in a way that suits that student best.
Awesome. Couldn't have said it better myself, Ian. Really great. Yeah. I think having things installed by default, because they are cloud-based, that everybody can be treated the same and you don't have to manually sit and install that special whatever it is. I think it makes such a difference to students and just normalizes everything. So Ian was talking about his approaches to teaching there, and I know, Stuart, you've gone a bit different this year and you've just started flipped learning.
Yeah, Ian reminded me actually dealing with Screencastify, which I've gone from not even hearing about to literally using every day, producing videos for children and staff actually. Yeah, so in some of our lessons, we've done the flipped approach. So everything has been on Google Classroom. I've done some little tutorial videos and the instructions, and it's pretty much, okay, here's our science lesson today. It's log into Google Classroom. You've already watched this video at home as part of your preparation for this lesson, right? There's the activity, get on with it. And the children have absolutely loved it, what they've done so far. I mean, year 5, we do the planets of the solar system as part of our science unit. And so they create a planet fact file, but the finer point in terms of, some of the shortcuts or how to do screenshots and so on, it's all been with a Screencastify video. And literally, I've not had to do anything. And it's just a great approach. And obviously, it's something we're going to do more and more of, because not every lesson will lend it. that way, but that having a look at something the day before or as part of a homework, and then you come in and you're already prepared for what the lesson's going to be, and because obviously they've already used some of these tools before, they can just hit the ground running, and it just turns what would have been a book lesson into a much more dynamic lesson. And not only that, but all the different skills, whether you're searching for videos on YouTube, you're embedding them into the slides, or you're adding and cropping images. I just love, and this is one reason why I love Google Sites as well, actually, that the depth of skills that they have to apply, but they pick up so quickly. And that's one where with flipped learning, you're testing their skills, but actually, they do really get a good handle on it so quickly.
I love that. I really do. I teach GCSE maths, and I teach that on an evening to 16 plus students, all the way up to 70 something. Some of them are age, so I've got a big age range that I cover, and I give them all their work ahead of time. I give them the Screencastify that I've made, and I frame it as the bit where I would do the talking at the board. I'm going to give you that now so you can watch that and have that in your mind, and then when you come into lesson, let's talk about how are the questions going? How are we going to tackle this problem? What are your misconceptions? And I find that it frees my time up as a teacher by doing this approach, because I can just sort of say, yeah, I'm not here to give you the teacher talk bit anymore. I can give you it here. And I've extended it into giving them choice as well using Google Forms. And if you didn't like my video, watch this video instead. I don't take it personally when they don't watch my video. But I think, there's so much potential for getting ahead of the game and getting them ready to learn in a more fluid way than sitting in that rigid position that we sometimes experience. Tara, you've been inducting new staff at your college, and you've been using the Google tools, the Google Workspace tools, to do that with them.
Yeah, so traditionally, pre-COVID, I would meet them face to face, and we'd sit at a PC, and a lot of people, they like you to drive the mouse, and they like you to do everything, and they like to just watch you doing it. But actually, they need to drive the mouse and do it so that the learning is embedded more, and they'll remember it better. So doing it via me over COVID, it has fine-tuned what they actually need to know, but it's really good because we meet via Meet, no pun intended, and I get them to present their screen, and what I do is I get them to present their window so that I can see the whole of their tabs and everything. So if they click on anything and they end up on, like we were just chatting about, Back to the Future site, then they know how to get back. And it's all a learning curve, and you learn by your mistakes as well. So yeah, the inductions have been really, really successful, and I'm really reluctant to start doing them face to face, just because it's just so well when they're driving the mouse themselves. So yeah.
I love that. I think it makes a huge difference when people learn by doing something. I always say when I'm working with staff is you can't break it. You literally can't break it. And also you can't forget to save it either, because it saves it for you. So you can always go back in that version history. And I tell a story of arriving at a college, and I did my training on, I think it was docs. And I was doing the training on Google Docs, and I finished, and I said, if anyone got any questions, wait about. And a teacher waited, and then I got caught by someone else, and she was still waiting. And then I got caught by someone else, and she was still waiting. And I went over and I said, look, I think I'm going to be here a while. Do you want me to come find you in a bit? She's like, yep. Went and found her in her office, and she was sobbing at her desk. She thought she'd deleted the entire budget plan for the college because she'd gone in and edited the copy. And it had all gone, and nobody could see what was there before. And she was like, I'm going to lose my job. And I very quickly showed her version history and restored it. And she was like, I've not slept for 2 days worrying about this. And I think there is that fear, isn't there, that you've broken it, and you have broken it, but you can't really break it. And version history generally will will save you. This isn't a question you prepared for, so I don't know if anyone wants to take this, but does anybody use version history for tracking student work? Ian, you were straight there. You were like, I teach high school. Yeah, me, go.
So because we're lucky, we've got quite a few ICT suites. A lot of other subjects get to book it out and use it. So English is one of them, and I'm regularly in the rooms with a class teacher, just to make sure that they're getting that confidence, because if they don't get to use the computers that often, I mean, they do have Chromebook trolleys which they use in their department, but when they come into the ICT suites, I always like to get in and make sure that they don't have it. If they've got any questions, I'm nearby and I can help them if they need help. So version history has come in very useful, especially when pupils are preparing for those senior phase assessments where they've got to build portfolios. So English folios, for example, being fairly important. And I think last week I had about 5 or 6 students who, in different classes, who felt that they had lost their work and they had to retype it again from scratch. And when I showed them version history, they were just amazed, and they were like, oh, I've spent hours worrying about this. And it was like you said, some were so upset that they probably would have been sitting sobbing in their rooms thinking, I've lost everything, I've got to start again. And that is a risk, actually. The way that we sort of set up our network is that if you save the file, it saves to the local computer, and every 30 days that computer gets wiped. It's the only way to keep it from filling up with stuff. So if they don't know how to save it to cloud storage when it's been saved to the network or saved to their My Documents, then they are going to lose that work. And that is something that Chromebooks and Google Workspaces have helped to solve, because you start editing in Google Docs. If you lose the internet, like I do a lot, then it, as soon as it comes back, it reloads it, and worst case, you've maybe lost 1 or 2 words, and that's helping build that digital competence and confidence in Portlethen Academy, certainly.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then you've also reminded me, and we've not touched on it yet, obviously work offline feature as well, and that it'll just naturally sync itself back together when you do reconnect. Tara, does version history have a place at your college with students?
Yeah, one of the things that I have remembered what's happened in the past is the group work. So obviously you can share slides, docs, anything, and you've got a group of students and you can see who's done what, who's actually done most of the work. However, as I was typing that, I did think that somebody could be sat there just narrating and somebody else is typing, and the person who's typing actually hasn't done anything. But it is a good way to see who's done what as well. We use it for our policies and action plans across college, and that's really useful because there's normally about 20-30 people using the same document. And we also use comments a lot, and it just works so well rather than having the one document going from one email to the next, and then you end up with 20 different versions and you don't know which one is the current one. So yeah, thank God that has ended.
A little insight into the management of schools and colleges there, and the policies just get passed around. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? And it does end up like a big long list of requirements, and then someone has to type them up. But yeah, thankfully, if we do it in Google Workspace, we can all comment and contribute together. Stewart, I don't need to ask because I have a Key Stage 1 child, but version history in primary, is it a key feature?
Yep, absolutely. Even this week, I had a girl scream because she deleted 3 of the slides on a collaborative task, and of course, her group were going, "What have you done?" And it was obviously it's a great teaching point because we hadn't really come across it before or needed it, and then you're able to show, look, don't panic. This is how you do it. And I didn't mean to do it. I said, well, look, these things, we all press sometimes a combination of keys, and next thing, something pops up or something deletes, and we don't know how it's happened. But yeah, we were able to restore her work, drama over, and everybody's able to get on with it. But pretty much what Tara said before is, when I can show the children that I can see what they're doing on Google Slides, but because they're all logged into the same document, I can see who's put the heavyweight work into a particular slide. And I used it the other day to showcase a group that had worked really well together on their table, because, you know, one pairing had done 3 or 4 text boxes, another group had done 3. It wasn't dominated by one, or one group had been quite lazy. So, you know, that collaborative aspect works really well. But yeah, version history just stops all the drama. And particularly, you know, one thing you didn't mention about, you know, the policy documents is not being able to open it because somebody else has already got it open at that particular time. I do not miss that at all. But yeah, the amount of times my children said to me, how do I save this? You know, no, you don't need to save it. But, you know, going back to what I said before, logging in was a nightmare. Saving their work at the end of a lesson was a nightmare. And you had a really small amount of time to do your lesson. And now those two things are just, you know, minimal, 30 seconds each, if that. Obviously, they don't need to save it either, but it just works really well.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned startup speeds at the top, Stuart, as well. And I wonder if, Tara, if startup speeds of Chromebooks, because I know you gave a lot of Chromebooks out when we were in lockdown and students were using them at home. Has the speed been useful of the startup speed of a Chromebook for your students in college?
Definitely. A lot of the comments that came back on the survey that I sent out was that they found the Chromebooks more engaging because there was less time spent waiting, so less time to get distracted by other things, get bored, and then think, oh, well, I'm not going to do it now because it takes too long. So it is that immediacy of not waiting for something to load up and thinking, right, I can get on and do it now. And I'm sure everybody's been in that situation where, in fact, one tutor said it took like 20 minutes for their PC to load up. And it again goes to the profiles. So that has reduced considerably. But yeah, and I think going back to across devices as well. And I can't wait till they formally launch the tab grouping feature, because the amount of tabs that I have open, you can only see the actual icon. You cannot see like the name of the tab. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to that one.
But I think that's it, isn't it? I think Google is always innovating and trying to come up with new ways. And I think one of the biggest things that I've been excited by, and I think you are too, Ian, is about saving Google Forms as you're going through them. What impact is that going to have on students? From my point of view, I see it as Google thinking, right, we need to just make this better for students. We're listening to the feedback and we're going to make this better. What are your thoughts about saving progress as you go through a Google form for your students?
So again, it's sort of relating back to last year during lockdown. It's much easier to get students to complete Google Forms than it is for them to complete Google Docs in a way, because you can embed those videos sort of you've recorded in Screencastify to guide them through the process. So you can give them a little demonstration above the question or questions or task. With the form, you can also get them to add files so they can upload their work. And so you can kind of have that kind of structured process. Now, in the past, I was quite ambitious with my Google Forms. So I had an entire topic in my Google form, and each page was a different lesson. And when I launched it, I was like, it's okay, it'll be fine. This was a few years ago. And at the end of the first lesson, there was uproar because they couldn't submit it. And so all their work was technically lost. Although they did, it was more for uploading the files to the correct folder. So the files were still there, but yeah, we had to wait until the end of the course before we filled in the form. But now I could go back to that and kind of revamp it, and the students could make progress through a much longer piece of work, filling in new sections each week, accessing the videos in a kind of sequential manner. So that means that, you know, you can provide maybe one page of a Google form that's got a couple of concepts, and once they're happy and they've uploaded the work for that, they can move on to the next one. So you could almost like create like a mini sort of course structure where they kind of self-direct them through it. And I think you said earlier, you know, with them selecting different pathways, with Google Forms, you can have them jumping to different pages based on their responses. So you could actually create that differentiation in Google Forms. I really do think it's a game changer. And the fact that it saves it as they go means that the student doesn't have to worry about hitting the submit button and losing their work.
Yeah, completely. And I think we've talked about teaching time being lost with startup speeds of devices. And if we, with the best will in the world, we're always going to be pushed for that time. So if we can save where they're up to in a Google form, it is going to make the difference for them. For my students, I try and do full exam papers in the Google form, and sometimes they just need a break. So to be able to save where they're at partway through a maths GCSE is going to be a huge game changer for them, to just save it and go, right, I'm going to have a break and I'm going to come back to it. Because let's be honest, nobody wants to sit a maths GCSE all the way through. But giving them that choice of going to sections based on answer, it gives them that ownership, and they're involved in their learning, and they're directing where their studies are from there. I just wonder then, I don't know, but who has touchscreen devices? I know, Ian, you've mentioned you do. Stewart, have you got touchscreens? Yeah. So we'll come to you, Stewart, first. How has the flexibility of flip or touchscreen devices impacted on your students, do you think?
Well, we have to recognise that our children are the touch generation, aren't they? They do not know anything else, which is always funny. In the old IT suite days, you'd see reception children coming and they try to swipe the monitor because that's all they were used to. But, one of the things actually is children are comfortable working in different ways, particularly with a touchscreen device. And so what I saw yesterday, actually, I haven't told my children that the devices we've got are flip and touch. They've worked it out themselves. So they knew it was touchscreen fairly quickly because they tried it and things moved. But yesterday, some of them discovered for the first time you could flip it as well. And straight away, they're in a more comfortable position for themselves in terms of they want the screen closer to them. So obviously they can flip it, and they can still do all the right clicking, and they can still move things, and they can still type things, because obviously one of the accessibility features is the on-screen keyboard. And it's just whatever suits them. Some children just like using the keyboard and the screen. Others like to flip between the two, for a bit of a pun there. But, it's a bit of flexibility. And we have deliberately, because obviously I've been in charge of buying devices, we've deliberately gone a little higher spec to get flip and touch, because we're thinking of longevity in terms of how we can use them. Because, years ago, we all staff were given a laptop, we were all given an iPad, but you're getting to the point now where our iPad Airs are, slowly becoming useless in terms of what apps will work and what won't. Twitter, for example, you have to roll back the version of the app to work on an iPad Air 1. And you actually, I use a Chromebook as my primary device, and I flip it all the time. Particularly for tutorials with children, put Jamboard up, go through answers. I'm literally writing on my screen. And the children see that and they go, all right, I'm going to do that the next lesson where we're using a Jamboard, and I just think he just gives them more choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Gives them more choice. It's more familiar to them, because this tablet generation, all the children have a tablet, whether they have access to it all the time or not. They have access to a tablet in the majority of cases now, and it's that's another battle we face as parents in how we manage that. But they are used to that swoosh of a movement from a very early age. So yeah, I think touchscreen is hugely valuable at primary. What about you, Ian? Has the flexibility of touchscreen and flip been useful for your students in secondary?
I mean, we don't have any experience of flip, but I can say that certainly the students they're finding the touch more intuitive. Whereas I'm the one that's surprised, so I always go for the trackpad or the mouse if it's connected. And I still get a surprise when I touch the screen and it does something on a Chromebook, because I'm thinking it has to be a tablet. But the students find that sometimes a lot more intuitive, so they'll move things around with their fingers whilst simultaneously like typing on the keyboard, so they can kind of like navigate a lot faster in some cases, and they find their own style as we all do. I don't think we've maximized the potential of touch yet. I think that as the Chromebooks, I mean the 600 Chromebooks in our school, but as the sort of use of Chromebooks gets more and more embedded in the school culture, we're going to find that staff are going to start to utilize, as Stewart says, Jamboard a lot more. Certainly I use Jamboard sort of delivered through Google Classroom, so that where it makes a copy of the Jamboard for a template for every student, and then I just have them all displayed on my screen, so that we can see the sort of different responses coming back, and then we can collaborate sometimes on our final response in a Jamboard, and they'll find it easier to do that with touch. I would feel, to sort of like organize their ideas and to lay them out as a group. But yeah, I think that's a bit further down the line for us. Certainly, we're lucky to have the touchscreens, and I think that certainly is helping some students maybe with visual impairment, using the screen magnifier as well, to quickly sort of like zoom into areas of the screen that they need. But yeah, I think something that we need to sort of develop further.
We completely do, and I think Stewart said is at the beginning of their journey, and we're all at different points with this. And I think with the touch screen, we've got the speed, and it maximizes your teaching time because you've got the speed of startup, but also then you've got the speed in class, that it's that intuitive movement for them to drag and drop. And when you look at a product like Jamboard, an app like Jamboard, it is designed to be used on a touchscreen device. That is what it's designed to do. You can sense that when you feel it, and I think we're going to see more of that coming in. But I think when we give them a touchscreen device, like you've both said, they have the choice of how they want to use it. And we're developing skills that, aren't written down skills of, are you able to use a touchscreen device? But it would be an expected skill, as they go through their education and into employment. What about you, Tara? Do any of your students have touchscreen devices?
They do, and some of them... we don't have a lot of the touch screen, but what they did say was just being able to scroll up and down and read was, they just found it a lot better than those that didn't have touch screens. So I don't know if you want me to talk about what I've just put in the chat about gaming, because when Ian was talking, it just made me think of... I've got an 8-year-old son, nearly 9-year-old, and he forced me down the route of letting him have Fortnite. He only plays it with me around, and then he forced me to get my own account so that I could play Fortnite with him on his Switch and me on the laptop. And this is what came to my mind, was that fortunately we managed to get a gaming laptop. And if you know the gaming laptops, they have like the A key is just like an up arrow, and so you use those for like fingers, or 3 fingers, but you also use the mouse as well to control the person that's going through Fortnite, and that's probably something that's going to get more and more like ubiquitous. And I mean, I play the piano, so it's like you're doing 2 different things with, your hands as well. So yeah, maybe like dual keyboard, mouse, touchscreen, keyboard, that kind of thing for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like Ian said, we've got a long way to go on this. Stewart, thinking about the touchscreens then, and I know when we were talking before, a word you used to me was multisensory.
Yeah, they are indeed. I mean, obviously they're so used to touchscreen devices, but when you're looking at being able to move things with your fingers, but also then the pressing of a keyboard or using the mouse or the trackpad, you're doing lots of different things at the same time. And, one thing that children struggle with is multitasking, but actually they're intuitively doing it on a touchscreen device. And you can see that with children. Some children just prefer to be able, for example, on Jamboard, to be moving items with their finger rather than, using the trackpad or a mouse. Others would prefer to use the trackpad or mouse, but it just gives them that option of how to do things. And I've seen it's almost like a character emerge with children as to, right, well, this is a touchscreen child, because they prefer to do it this way, or somebody's more traditional and they go, okay, keyboard as well. And I was thinking before, actually, the DFE recovery curriculum talks about digital skills. It doesn't define digital skills as such, but now digital skills encompass so much more than probably what they did a year ago, 2 years ago. And, the touch element is one aspect of that, and it's just, it's been great for us to see how much our children have picked it up really, really quickly.
I think, fantastic. And I think what we're showing here is that it does cover across the ages. We've got littlies all the way up to 16 plus in colleges as well. And we're finding that it is just intuitive, whatever your age, wherever you're at. And it does just do all the things that you need it to do. So I just want to, this might be embarrassing for one of you, we'll have to say. I just want to flick through Stuart's face then. Some of the tweets that came in when I put my tweet out about what do you think about Chromebooks. We've got Georgina here, and she was saying that it's a versatile solution to support, engage teaching and learning, creative and user-friendly. And it's a part of a digital transformation. She described it as perfection with her GIF. And then we had this one here saying, quick startup, so many of the duller things running a computer don't seem to matter. But then we had this one, and this one caught my eye. They do exactly what they say on the tin. There's no superfluous software or hardware, and they're efficient and great value for money. Perfect for the classroom. And Flip Touch gives you lots of options. And that was you, Mr. Stewart Rogers, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I'm really passionate about this, and I could talk about this for so long, but I think we have been brainwashed for 25 years in a certain ecosystem and how things work. And actually, you know what? It does not work in this day and age. And I don't see why we have to conform to the old way of doing things. So I love the Google ecosystem because it's simple. We know it, for example, Docs is a short cut down version of Word. But when you actually look at, certainly at primary level, what children or what schools use them for, I do not need something with a huge amount of RAM. I do not need a 320 gig hard drive. And yet, that's generally what's pushed our way. And when you look at the simplicity of things speeding up, I think it's 8 seconds a Chromebook from literally opening the lid to being able to sign in. And then you look at the simplicity of the ecosystem. You always go to the waffle to get your app. Or even, for example, when you go into the Omnibox and you're typing jam.new, that works for every Google tool virtually. And I just love the simplicity of it. And when I'm teaching 9 and 10-year-olds, and I don't have to worry about saving it in a certain folder, and then the next week they can't find that work in that folder, which used to drive me insane. And I just think the simplicity of it from start to finish, even shutting things down, talking before about profiles, if you didn't sign into that laptop previously, it will take longer for the profile to load up on a laptop. And like I say, sometimes that could take, ages. Then throw in the fact that your laptops have not been used all summer. So as soon as you switch them on in September, they have a mega load of updates to apply. Don't get that with Chromebooks. And I just think that literally, they do what they say on the tin because they are so simple and effective to use.
Oh, they should employ you, Stuart. That was perfect. That was brilliant. That was absolutely amazing. Tara, what do you think? You said before, like Microsoft Word, and we've got 15% of it in Google Docs, and that's sufficient. Is that true across the package, do you think? Does Chrome and Chromebooks, do they do what students need?
Yeah. I was just crunching through the figures and what they were saying in the survey that I sent out, and the amount of times that I coloured a cell green because that was a yes, that was a yes, that was a yes. And I was like, fantastic. Students, I think students that aren't specifically on software development or programming or media course, something that needs something different, like a high spec PC, a gaming PC, then those students that, for example, are in the care sector, the land-based sector, business sector, they can use it and just fly, basically. And yeah, they love it. They love Chrome and the versatility of being able to use different apps with Chrome as well. So yeah.
Fab, interesting. And now I'm going to bring Ian in here because Ian teaches what traditionally is quite a complex subject, and you need certain packages to teach your subject, don't you, Ian?
Yeah, traditionally, I think thanks to lockdown, because there's been some good things coming out of lockdown, but just before it, about 3 or 4 months before it, we started using some sort of web-based services for programming, and it was more with the younger ages, so maybe sort of upper middle school. So we were using a site called Replit, which is allows you to program in a browser, and that allowed me to sort of create a file which was a template, a bit like yeah, like a Google Doc that the pupils could then make a duplicate of and then change their code, add to it, and then I would see the results. And every single student who makes a copy of that Replit, they get a different link, and that link allows me to see their work without any hassle at all, really. And we sort of share it all through Classroom. So they paste our links into into private comments on Google Classroom, and then I can go back at any time I want, night or day, on my phone, on the tablet, on a PC, like this, and then I can go and check their work. And it's been fantastic. And as soon as we went into lockdown, that enabled us to just hit the ground running. And as soon as we, because at that point we were still thinking that exams might happen in that first lockdown, when we were at home for 3 weeks before April, going, yeah, it'll be fine. And then, so we were continuing to use Replit to prepare students for what we thought was their exams. By giving them these live programming examples, I was able to teach using Google Meet and bring in Replit, and they could join the same web page and they could see me live coding on their screens. I could also edit their code during a Google Meet. So I could actually go in and say, okay, you've made a little bit of a mistake here, and then type into their code, because we're looking at the same web page. Students could collaborate as well in groups and sort of peer review their own code as well. So things like that. I mean, it's such a powerful tool, Replit, and I know I can speak on behalf of most of the computing teachers in Scotland, is that has really sort of made a huge difference to our ability to make lessons engaging and run it hassle free. As long as the website is unblocked, you're going to have access to, I think, 70 or 80 different languages, programming languages. You can make a database, you can make a website, you can make a Java program, you can make a game. And the Replit team, I should be sponsored by them, but I'm not. But they keep on adding new things every sort of few weeks, and they're also developing a curriculum, which means it's a big discussion just now about centralized planning. That is enabling computing teachers who are just maybe in a single person department, for example, without that support, to upskill themselves and then deliver consistent sort of teaching and learning across an entire country.
I think fascinating the fact that you were able to take a subject that needed specialist software and still deliver it in remote distance online learning using Chromebooks and the Chrome browser just to get access wherever the students were. I think that is where we're coming to now, and that game changer of where we're going with technology and education technology. And my friend Paddy McGrath, who you may know from TechSelf, he always says, stop calling it education technology, it's just technology. And I think he's absolutely right. Believe it or not, we are at the end of our time. It's absolutely flown by for me. Thank you so much, my wonderful panel. I was joined today by Tara, Ian and Stewart. Thank you for sharing your experiences with Chrome. Thank you for sharing your experiences with Chromebook. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sammy.
So this was the first of our sessions with looking at Chrome for everyone on behalf of C Learning. If you want to find out when the next are, follow us on Twitter or reach out to us and subscribe to the channel, and you'll catch the next sessions too. Thank you all.